Hello guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. Today's video is going to be another reading wrap-up video for the month of March. I'm going to talk about all of the books that I read in March, and I'll give just like a tiny summary of them and like what I thought of them, but no spoilers, so don't worry about that. I read a freaking ton of books this month. I know I say that every month, but then every month I read more than I did the month before. You know, it just is what it is. I'm a really fast reader, and for some reason I feel like I'm in a race to read as many books as I can. I feel like I'm reading like it's going away, but I think I read 17 books this month, which is a lot. And I had one DNF that I read half of, so it would have been a lot if I finished that one. Let me just pull up my Goodreads account so that I can go and see where I'm at. Going back to the very beginning of the month, I read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This was one that I saw all over Book Talk and BookTube, and it was okay, but it was really just like okay. I did not really understand the hype on this one. I think that I probably would have liked it a lot more if I was like 10 years younger. Like I probably would have really liked this when I was like in high school maybe. At this stage in my life, just like high school girl solving crimes is just like not really the vibe to me, I guess. But I did think that it was written in like a very unique way. The story was like kind of interesting. The twist was kind of good, but like all of it was just very like lackluster to me. Like I was not impressed by it, and I never really felt excited to read it. I gave this one a 2 out of 5. I just didn't love it. The next one I read was Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. I loved this one. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say anything negative about this book. Like it's very popular and very rightfully so. I love every book by Christina Lauren, so no surprise there. This book was like a friends to lovers and also like a second chance romance book. A slight trigger warning in this one that I didn't really even know was like a trigger for me until I was reading this is that the mom in this book dies of cancer. Now as a mom, it's like very hard for me to read books about moms dying. Just be warned of that before you go into it. But her and her dad buy a like weekend home after her mom passes away, and she meets this boy Elliot who lives next door to their weekend home. So you kind of get to see like the evolution of their friendship and relationship living next door to each other on her weekends. And then at some point something happens where they go their separate ways, and then they find their way back to each other again, and it was really good. That one was an easy 5 out of 5 for me. It made you feel all the feels. It was just all around great. Then after that, I read Normal People by Sally Rooney. Very hyped up book. I was really looking forward to reading this, and I really didn't know like what it was about going into it. Also, this book doesn't have any quotation marks in it. That was a little bit hard to get used to, like trying to figure out what was dialogue and what wasn't, but you get used to it pretty fast. Also, this is a slice of life book. This is not like a plot book where you're like following a certain story. It's just kind of giving you like pieces on a timeline, which is usually not my favorite kind of read either. I find that to be like a little bit boring, but I did really like this book, although I felt like it was a little bit frustrating to read. It's basically about these two people, Marianne and Connell. It's kind of like a coming of age book for both of them. Like you're kind of seeing them from high school throughout college and afterwards, kind of like growing up and just dealing with the things you deal with in those ages, and also their relationship with each other. It was so frustrating to read though, because there's just so much miscommunication between the two characters that could just be solved with such simple conversations, and it like makes sense as you're reading it. Sometimes I just wanted to like throw the book and be like, just talk to each other, like tell them how you feel. Like it was just like really frustrating, and the ending was sad too. It was just like, I don't know. They also made a Hulu adaptation of this book, which I watched right away after reading it, and I felt like they did a really good job. Rating this one is hard because I did like it, but I also didn't like it at the same time. Like I just like could not figure out what to rate this book, so I just gave it a 3 out of 5. I was going back and forth between 2 stars and 4 stars, so I just gave it 3. I still just like can't really decide if I liked it or not, but I'm glad that I read it. Then I moved on to another extremely hyped up book, and I read The Spanish Love Deception. This is another one where I just like can't quite decide if I liked it or not. After reading it, I think I heard somewhere that she like didn't have an editor for this book or something, and that it was like self-published. I don't know how true that is or not, but I felt like that kind of explained the book a little bit, because I really feel like this book was like 200 pages too long. Like it just kept going on and on and on, and there was just so much unnecessary stuff in there that I was like, what is going on here? I forgot to say what it's about, but it's a enemies to lovers fake dating type of book where this girl ends up taking her coworker that she doesn't like, doesn't get along with, but he offers to be her fake date for her sister's wedding in Spain because she doesn't want her family to know that she's like still single and her ex-boyfriend is like the best man in the wedding, and so she doesn't want to go to this wedding alone. It was like good, but it was a little bit too much. And there were some like really embarrassing dirty talk lines in this book that were just so cringy that like after I read them, I was just like, I'm immediately done with this book. It was kind of good, but I don't really recommend it. I don't know. I think that there are better fake dating, like enemies to lovers, like books that are just like this. This one just like did not really live up to the hype for me at all. So I gave it a 3 out of 5. Okay, after that, I read All Your Perfects by Colleen Hoover, and oh my God, I loved this book so much. This is definitely my favorite Colleen Hoover book that I have read so far. I absolutely loved it. I feel like this is one of her more underrated books. Like I don't hear people talking about this one enough. This one is about Quinn and Graham. You get the story from like past and present and kind of like their love story falling in love, and then also like I think 7 or 8 years in the future when they're having like some very serious marital problems, and it just kind of goes back and forth like that, and then them like overcoming it and kind of like coming back together at the end. And oh my God, this book was just so many feels. Graham in this book is probably my favorite book man ever. I love him. I love him. He did some things in this book that I did not like, but I love him. You need to immediately add it to your TBR if you haven't read it. Do not judge it by its ugly cover. The cover is hideous. The first chapter of the book was like so freaking good. I want to read it again. 5 out of 5. Easy 5 out of 5. After that, I finished The Glass Castle, which is a memoir. This was my friend's book club book pick for the month, and I actually listened to it on audiobook because I was trying to read it as a regular book, but it was so hard for me to get through, so I ended up just buying it on audio. I don't normally read a ton of memoirs, and kind of like what I was saying about normal people, like I just don't really love these like slice of life books that just kind of go like along a timeline. I kind of like for there to be like a story and a plot and like something going on. This one is just a memoir of Jeanette Walls telling her life story of growing up with 2 very toxic, neglectful, abusive parents, and it shows like pretty much all of the good and the bad of their childhood, because as awful as their parents were, they really had their amazing qualities too. And as a mom, it was really hard to read because these parents were like so awful at sometimes that you just can't imagine how someone could be like so neglectful and like awful to their kids. Ugh. This book also was made into a movie, and I watched that as well. The movie did not even scrape the surface of how awful their parents were. Like I felt like the movie left out so much of the awful stuff that was in the book, which probably makes for a better movie, but I felt like it was not very accurate of like just how bad and difficult their like childhood and their life was. I didn't rate this one. It feels wrong to rate a memoir, so yeah, if you want to read a traumatizing story about a horrible childhood, read this one. After that, I read Second First Impressions by Sally Thorne. This book is about Ruthie and Teddy. Ruthie, I think she was like 25 or something, but she works and lives in a retirement community, so she hardly ever like gets away from this retirement community, and she also just kind of like dresses like an old lady. She's kind of like stuck in her ways and like not really like living like a 25-year-old at all. And then the owner of the retirement community, his son Teddy, who is a tattoo artist and like a bad boy, rides a motorcycle, is covered in tattoos. His dad is forcing him to work at the retirement community also, and he moves in right next door to Ruthie, and the romance ensues. And it was actually really cute. This was like the grumpy sunshine trope, but backwards. So she was kind of the grumpy one and he was like the sunshine one, which I never have read a book with that trope that way. I feel like it's always like the girl who is like the sunshine and it's like the boy who's grumpy. It was really cheesy and dorky, but it was like a fun, easy read. Nothing crazy, but I did like it. So I gave this one a 3 out of 5. After that, I read Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. I think I read a lot of Colleen Hoover this month, and I felt really let down by this book. This is my least favorite Colleen Hoover book that I have read so far. This one is about a girl named Tate who moves in with her brother, who is a airline pilot, and he lives right next door to his best friend Miles, who is also an airline pilot. Miles and Tate basically get into this like friends with benefits situation where they're just like hooking up because Miles is like really cranky and closed off, and like does not want a relationship, but basically just like wants to bone. But you're also getting flashbacks of his past and basically like what made him so grumpy and closed off. Like you're reading about the love story of his first love and like kind of like what happens to make him so against ever like falling in love again, basically. And although I normally love that writing style, and I actually really did like the writing style in this book, it was like very poetic, and I like really liked the way that it was written, but I just didn't care about any of the characters in the story. I didn't care about Tate, I didn't care about Miles, I didn't give two craps about what they were doing. It just didn't like have that Colleen Hoover thing about it that just had me like super roped in. Like I just didn't care about any of the characters. And then when you like get to the point where you find out like why he's like this, it's awful. It's so sad. I just didn't love it. It didn't really have it for me, but I did think it was kind of cool that there was some character overlap from November 9 by Colleen Hoover. The three main characters of this book make an appearance in November 9. So if you've read that one, you can kind of like see the little crossover with the characters, but I just gave this one a 3 out of 5 because it was just like very average to me. After that, I read The Silent Patient, another one that is like crazy hyped up. I see this on Book Talk constantly. People go crazy over the twist in this book. Like they just like think that it's amazing. So I was so excited to read it. This one is about this woman named Alicia who basically gets arrested for murdering her husband. She shoots her husband and gets arrested. And after she shoots him, she never says another word ever again. And then it's like 6 years later, she's been in a like mental facility basically that whole time. And the story is basically about her, how she got there. And then it's a lot of story about her psychotherapist, Theo, also, and how he is trying to like help her talk, try to figure out like what happened and like why she killed her husband. I felt like the description of this book was so good, and I thought this book was going to be so interesting, and I just thought it was like kind of boring, especially for like a thriller. I was just bored reading most of it. Although I did not see the twist coming at all. I was very surprised by the twist. I was like, dang, I should have seen it coming, but I didn't. I gave this one a 3 out of 5. I just thought that it was okay. Then I read another Christina Lauren book. I read The Soulmate Equation. This is another one that I freaking loved so much. This is like in my favorite book category now. Like a highly recommend. I don't see people talk about this one enough at all. It was such a good rom-com, lighthearted, lovey-dovey story. It was so good. This is about this girl named Jess, and she is a single mom of like a 6-year-old. She's a busy single mom, so she hasn't been dating a lot for like a long time. And then there is this brand new dating service where you can basically like submit a like DNA sample, and they will match you to other people based off of your like DNA compatibility. It's like this whole new like technology that is created about how to find like your perfect match based off of your DNA. So her friend convinces her to do it, convinces her to like submit a sample and to like give it a try to see if she can find somebody that's like really compatible with her. And there's like all these different levels of compatibility. The higher your compatibility percentage, like the more likely to like have like a really good lasting relationship or whatever. I think in the book they were like aiming, like it was like really amazing if you could get like a 70% match or something like that. And then she submits her sample and she finds somebody who is her 98% soulmate match. I won't give away anything more, but it was so good. I really, really liked this book. I loved the characters. There were so many good side characters, so much character development, and it was just really, really cute. I think I stayed up really, really late finishing this book because I just like could not put it down. This was another like really, really good A+ book boy. I loved him. Another easy 5 out of 5 for me. Add this one to your list for sure. Next, I read The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. And yet again, I felt let down by a super, super hyped up, popular book. I had to wait 3 months to get this book from my library card. When I added myself to the list, I was like 112th in line to read this book. Like that's how popular it is. And then after I read it, I was like, why is this book so popular? It was just so average to me. And maybe it's because I read a ton of these like contemporary rom-com books. So it just like didn't really compare to other ones that I read, but like I just did not get the hype. This is another fake dating trope. It's basically about a girl who is in like a graduate program to get her PhD. She's like a PhD candidate and she ends up fake like dating one of the professors at the school she goes to, like not her own professor, just like a different one, and romance ensues. And it was like a good book. It was okay, and there was some spice in there, and it was good spice, but also this entire book was so convoluted and so like unnecessarily complicated and just like ridiculous. I don't know, I just didn't love it. It was just very average to me, which was disappointing because it is just like so hyped up, but like I don't know why. So I gave this one a 3 out of 5. I thought that it was just like very average. After that, I read If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nolan. There was like a couple of girls on BookTube that were talking about this book, so I decided to read it. I did not realize that this was like very much a young adult book. It reads very young. Like I definitely would have loved this book when I was like in high school or like younger, but I also still did really like it now. It's kind of like a coming of age book that basically follows a girl all throughout high school, and it's kind of about her and her next door neighbor who grew up together. They were born like a week apart. Their moms were best friends and they grew up together and were like best friends their whole lives, and then kind of went their separate ways in high school because she was more kind of like going against the grain, kind of like high school misfit type of thing, and he was more like an athlete, playing sports, dating cheerleaders, things like that. So they were just like total opposites in high school. It was just a sweet story. It definitely has a really sad ending. It was just wild how perfectly it captured what it's like to be that age, especially if you are kind of like going against the grain in high school and you are not like the classic normal popular high schooler. It was kind of boring, but I still really liked it. I gave this one a 4 out of 5, but it is very young, so keep that in mind if you want to read it. It's just like nothing crazy. Then I read One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I've never read a book by her that I didn't love. This book is about a girl named Emma who marries her high school sweetheart, and you get to kind of see their love story and how they like meet in high school and fall in love and everything, and then they get married, and then he is in a helicopter crash. His helicopter crashes over the ocean and he dies, and it's awful, devastating, ruins her entire life. Obviously she ends up like moving home, moving back in with her parents, like just having an absolute horrible time, and then it kind of accidentally ends up falling in love with another person. She finally starts to move on, and then when she's about to marry this new guy, you find out that her first husband survived the helicopter crash and is alive. And that's not a spoiler, that is like literally the first line of the book, is that you find out that her first husband is alive and didn't actually die, but he's been gone for like 3.5 years, and now she's in love with someone new, but he's back. And this book literally gave me so much heartache to read. I felt like it was physically hurting my heart to read this book. I just felt for all of these characters so hard. It was like such an impossible position for all 3 of them. The only thing I didn't love about this book was I hated the main character. I just thought she was kind of annoying, and I don't know. I still really loved the book, but I didn't love the main character. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 for that reason. It was still really, really good, but it's definitely sad. So be ready to like have your heart hurt if you're gonna read this one. After that, I read Good Girl Complex by Elle Kennedy. This is my first Elle Kennedy book. This book had a very Outer Banks like theme and feel to it. I can't remember like where exactly this takes place, but it's some sort of beach town where there are like the locals, and then also there's like all of the super rich tourists, and there's like a really expensive college that like all of these very, very wealthy kids go to, and the locals don't really like all of these like rich people, and like vice versa. So it's a romance between a local bad boy Cooper, who was loved him. I love a good bad boy in a rom-com, and he was it. There was some tea, some drama in this book. It was also a little bit spicy. This one was good. I really liked this one. This would be like a really good summertime beachy read. I gave this one a 4 out of 5. And then I read yet another Colleen Hoover book. I read Confess. I don't want to say too much about it because I feel like it's best to go into Colleen Hoover books like not knowing too much, but I thought that this one was really good. It was a little bit like insta-lovey, which I know is not everybody's favorite. I don't mind it at all. I think Colleen Hoover does insta-love like very well, like when characters are like immediately like drawn to each other. This was just like a very good, very fast read. I gave it a 4 out of 5. It just didn't quite live up to my 5-star reads, but it was still very good. After that, I read Lease on Love by Fallon Ballard. I was so excited to read this one because it has such a pretty cover, and I was majorly disappointed by it. I thought that this book was kind of bad. Honestly, it was not good. I think it had the potential to be good, but I just really didn't like the main character at all. She was just like annoying and self-deprecating, and they just kept trying to like drill you and like tell you that she has all these issues but it was like, I don't know. I did not like her. And then the like male love interest character, there was just like no character development there. They just like gave you nothing to like about him basically. The whole story was just like ridiculous. And then after like halfway through, I was just like bored to death. I was like, please let this book end. I didn't like it. I don't recommend. The cover is beautiful, but that's like pretty much all it has going for it, in my opinion. I only gave this one a 2 out of 5. The 2 felt generous. Okay, last one, finally, at the freaking end. The very last book I read this month was The Kiss Quotient by Ellen Huang. I was so pleasantly surprised by this book. I really, really liked it. This book is about Stella, who has Asperger's, or like really high functioning autism. She just turned 30 and she has all of this pressure from her parents to date and to like meet someone and to get married and have kids. And she feels all this pressure to like have a relationship basically. But all of her sexual encounters that she's had so far in her life have all just been really, really awful. Because of her autism, she just has a really hard time with some of the social aspects of like dating and relationships and intimacy. And so she ends up hiring a male escort, Michael, to help teach her how to be intimate basically, and like how to get better at sex and how to basically like be in a relationship. This book somehow managed to be like so wholesome and adorable and also like filthy and steamy all at the same time. And it was just like a really good combo. I was so pleasantly surprised by this book. I really, really liked it. And I guess that there are like 1 or 2 more in this series. So I have those on hold already to read on my library card because I did really, really like this book. I gave this one a 4 out of 5. I thought that it was really cute and really good and really steamy. I'm editing this video and realized that I forgot to talk about my one DNF book from this month. It was Red, White, and Royal Blue, which I had to wait so freaking long for on my library card because it's so hyped up. I hear it on everybody's favorite book lists and I was so excited to read it. I got 37% of the way through it before I was like, I just can't do it. I just like could not get myself to care about the characters at all. I hated the main character, Alex. I just did not like his personality. I did like Prince Henry. I thought he was like cute and funny, but like I just like could not get past Alex and how annoying I thought he was. And I don't care about politics or the royal family in any way at all. So everything about the book was boring and I hated the main character. I think it was like 180 pages. Like I read a lot of this book and I was just like, I don't care. I like could not wait to move on to something else. I'm literally winded from talking. That was a lot, I know. But yeah, those are all of the books that I read this month. As always, please leave me any recommendations that you have for me in the comments. I will add all of your recommendations to my list to read, and I'll link my Goodreads down below too if you want to follow me on there to get some book recommendations. But yeah, that is my reading wrap up for March. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and follow on Instagram, and I will see you guys all in my next video.